Everybody, just wanted to climb on here and share with you an exercise that we did this past Saturday. We did a Saturday study on talking about some plant and some water, where we were understanding how to get the gospel right, learning how to share our faith, but also coming along and making sure that we're getting our testimony tight. It's good for people to know about how Christ worked and what God was doing in history and how Christ worked at the cross and the empty tomb. That is an objective thing that has happened in history, but also God works in us, in our history. And it's good for us to be able to share with people where we were before we came to Christ, how we came to Christ, and how our lives changed. So we're going to look at that in just a moment. But I came across this story. Jay Adams wrote this book about helping people to listen well to sermons and how to, just as a pastor would prepare for a sermon, so our people need to be prepared to listen. He talked about a banker and how they train younger bankers, newer bankers, regarding counterfeit money. The way that they would do this was, instead of looking at all the different materials that were used to make counterfeit bills, they made sure that they knew what a real bill looked like and felt like so well that anything different would be identified as something counterfeit and false. And I think that's something that can translate for us to thinking about our faith, because sometimes we can spend so much time learning about what other people believe. And I think there is a value to that, but it can never be at the expense of making sure that we are clear and tight and understanding exactly what we are called to believe and bearing fruit in a lifestyle that is based upon what our convictions are, never compromising, staying strong to the convictions that God has given us in his word. And there's another reason for that. And so Trevin Wax recently wrote a book called The Multi-Directional Leader. And he reminds all of us that there are three main directions that us leaders and really churches, I'm not say Christians, we just put everybody in that bucket. Three directions that we need to be aware of and make sure that we're going. One is the care of each other's souls, making sure we're taking care of each other's souls. The care for the scriptures that we teach and love and preach. And caring for the culture and the context in which we live. Because if we go in any of those directions at the expense of the other directions, then there's going to be an incompleteness to our ministry. All we have to do is read through the book of Acts, and we see that there is a caring of souls. We also see that there is a preaching of the word, but also making sure that we are recognizing what we need to be and what we need to be doing when it comes to the culture. Okay. So I want to just share with you one exercise that we did this past Saturday. And I'd love for you, if you would, to turn over to, well, you can look at it, or I'm going to put it up here, but I'm just so used to telling people to look at Acts chapter 22. And I'd love it if you could do that. Acts chapter 22, verses 3 to 21. We're just going to breeze over this. But what I'd like for you to do, let me share the screen here so we can make sure all of this is up and ready to roll. Okay. So let me go back here. Now, when we're looking at this particular passage of scripture, I'm going to bump my way down here. What Paul is doing, Paul had been arrested falsely. They thought that he had been messing with something and doing some wrong things while he was worshiping in the temple, thought he brought a Gentile into one of the inner courts. He never did that. But he asked if he could speak to the crowd. And they said, well, fine. He starts speaking in Hebrew. Everybody gets quiet. And it's an exercise. This part in Acts 22, 3 to 21 is just a reminder of how Paul shared his testimony. It gives us a good template for us. So Paul here you're seeing here, is telling us about what his life was like before he became a Christian. I'm a Jew born in Tarsus in Cilicia, but brought up in this city, educated at the feet of Gamaliel, according to the strict manner of the law of our fathers, being zealous for God, and as all of you are this day. I persecuted this way to the death, binding and delivering to prison both men and women, as the high priest and the whole council of elders can bear me witness. From them I received letters to the brothers, and I journeyed toward Damascus to take those also who were there and bring them in bonds to Jerusalem to be punished. So Paul is setting up how his life was so far off of what God's will was, even as he thought he was fulfilling God's will. Your testimony may not be like that. Your testimony is, I didn't care about God or anything along that line in any form, way, shape, form, or fashion, right? You could be like that. But it's good for you to remember where you were before Christ came along and changed you. Now, I'll say this right now. You may also go through this, and you may be saying, I don't know if there was a real time where Christ changed me. Well, sometimes it may be immediate, and sometimes it may be over time. But here Paul is saying, look, this is where I was before Christ. I didn't care about Christ. I didn't care about any of those things. This is where I was, and I was all in on it. Okay? Here's the next piece about how God changed his life. And as you read through this, as I was on my way and drew near to Damascus about noon, a great light from heaven suddenly shone around me, and I fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to me, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And I answered, where are you, Lord? And he said to me, I am Jesus of Nazareth, whom you are persecuting. Now those who were with me saw the light, but did not understand the voice of the one who was speaking to me. And I said, what shall I do, Lord? The Lord said to me, rise and go into Damascus, and there you will be told all that is appointed for you to do. And since I could not see because of the brightness of that light, I was led by the hand by those who were with me, and I came to Damascus. He goes on, and now we are introduced, I'm going to have you just read through this. We're introduced to Ananias, and Ananias is brought up in chapter 9, and Ananias was not immediately receptive, but he was obedient, and he went and met this, well, we could just say Paul was a terrorist, at least the Christian church would say so. And God used him to confirm the call. You read the next piece in 17 to 21, and then you see, well, this is how my life changed. Now I'm all about Jesus. I'm going to go to the Gentiles, which was something that the Jews thought the Gentiles were so unclean. How dare you could do this? And you see that there was a change. There was a focus. I'm all in for Christ. Don't care what anybody else says. I hope you come to Christ, but this is my mission. This is my purpose. This is how God has commissioned me, and I'm going to love him with everything I have. I'm going to love my neighbor as myself. So as you think about your testimony, dear Christian, I'm just going to encourage you to make sure that you have something like that down to where in 3 or 4 sentences, you can share what happened before you came to Christ, in 3 or 4 sentences, when you came to Christ and how that happened, 3 or 4 sentences, how your life has changed. And if you've been a Christian for a while, I've been a Christian for 43 years. If you've been a Christian for a while, sometimes you may forget about those things. You may forget about what God did, right? It may cause you to reevaluate. Was I really saved, or was I just doing what someone else was telling me to do and there was nothing that happened? Making sure that you're clear about the gospel in your own life, and as you shared, of course, and making sure that you're examining yourselves. 2 Corinthians 13:5 tells us, examining yourselves and testing yourselves to see whether you are in the faith. This is an exercise that can have eternal benefits for you. All right. So go ahead, do that. Just see what happens when you start putting your testimony together. Let me know what happens. Let me know what you think. Let me know about it. Maybe you want to share it. That would be incredible if you could share your testimony with me and learn how to do that. And maybe you'll be sharing it with your parents or your children or each other as husband and wife, or your friend or your coworker or your neighbor. Be ready to tell other people about the good things that Jesus has done in you. Okay? Let me know what you think. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.